Quickly to go through, in the last session, we saw what is a variable in Python and what are the different types of variable, that is a normal number or a string, or you can use a collection called list, and in case if it is needed for complex task, we'll be using something called as dictionary. So to proceed further, now let's understand certain things on what are you going to do with that value. So if you have a variable, pretty much the reason why you are using it to store, and what is the purpose of storing? To use it, and basically you want to do some operation on top of that. So that way, now in Python, there are certain operators using which you will be performing some operation on it, where the operators are nothing but some kind of symbols, where using which you will be trying to do some computational work or some conditional matching, or you want to pretty much do arithmetic task, those kind of things that you want to compute based on the value that you have stored. Because ideally the interest of ours is not to just store the value, but use and compute something. Okay, and in that cases, now when you have more than 2 or 3 values, you will be using this operator, which are nothing but some symbols, using which you will be performing some operation. And in that case, the values using which you will be operating, or against which you will be using some operators, are called as operands. For example, if you want to add 2 numbers, where how do you add it? You will be using a plus. So that plus is called as a operator, whereas those 2 numbers that you have against which you are going to do some addition or computing is called as operands. Okay. Now, when you have an operator, basically these are the ones which will construct a value, and you can manipulate the value of the operand later. Okay. So basically, based on what current value that you give, it will be trying to change the output of what operands that you're taking and what is the operations that you're trying to do with it. Okay. Now, what kind of operations that you can do? So based on that, you have different kind of operators in Python. Now, the most common ones that we will be using is arithmetic operators, and then comparison operators, and you also have logical operators, conditional operators, assignment operators, and bitwise operators. So out of this, if you look for a beginner and to get started with the fundamentals, it is quite important that we should understand the arithmetic operation, comparison operation, and conditional operation. Okay, so now let's get deeper into what exactly these operators are and how is that you want to work. So basically, now if you have a number and you want to do some kind of arithmetic operation on it, so what do you mean by arithmetic operation? Basically adding 2 numbers, or multiplying, or dividing, or subtracting. So those kind of tasks that you want to do are basically called as arithmetic operations. And for doing any kind of arithmetic operations, you have specific operators for it, and those operators are called as arithmetic operators. Okay, now what are the arithmetic operators that we have? So you can see that in the table, these are the most common, or pretty much the arithmetic operators that we have. And now, as I said, for doing addition, you will be using an operator that is plus, and for doing a subtraction, you will use minus, and for multiplying 2 numbers, you will be using star. Okay, so because x represents, that is a different number, so for multiplying 2 numbers, you will be using star mark. And if you want to pretty much divide 2 numbers, then you will be using the /. And if you want to take a modulus of 2 numbers, then you will be using the percentage. And at any time, if you want to take an exponential value of a particular numbers, then you will take double star. Okay, and this is something called as floor division. I'll talk about it, but this is not of a regular use, but still there's an operand that you will be using. Now, what exactly each one of us is going to do? So now, when you are going to use an operator, you need at least 2 operands. So remember, You cannot use an operator against one variable. So pretty much now you need two operands where each operand is nothing but a value which is being obtained by a variable. So to work on any operator or to use any operator, we need at least two operands, that is two variables in which value will be stored. So now let's take an example where you have a variable called A and you have a variable called B. Now in each one of them, if we have stored some value, let's assume the value of A is 10 and the value of B is 20. Then if you want to add these two variables, then you will be using the operator this way, where if you say A plus B, the value of that will be 30. It is not the way that you define. Basically, this is the output of what you're going to get, but the way that you'll be using the operator is this way. So you'll be just saying A plus B, and this will return a value called the output of adding these two numbers. The same way, now if you want to subtract two numbers, the same way, subtract two values that are present in a variable, then you will be using it like this, where you will say the first operand minus the second operand, and correspondingly whatever value that you have stored, it will be giving you the output. Okay, now if you want to multiply two operands, once again you will say the first operand star and the second operand. Correspondingly, you will be getting a value for that. Now if you want to divide two operands, then you will be saying the operand 1 slash the operand 2, and corresponding to it, whatever value that you will be getting is what will be published on the screen. Okay, and then suppose if you want to take the modulus. So what do you mean by modulus? So whatever that you try to divide and the remainder that you're going to get is what we call it as modulus. So that way, if you want to take a modulus between these two, then you use the percentage. Okay, the same way, now if you want to do exponential calculation on an operator, then you will be using the double star. And the last one that I was saying, this is called as a floor division. So what exactly this is going to do? So this kind of operand, where if you give a particular operand value, what it is going to do is, this will try to divide the operand, and the result of which, whatever that you're going to get, it will be removing the decimal point in that, and it will be rounding off the figure and giving it to you. Suppose if you say 9 divided by 2, how much is it? It will be coming around 4 point something. So what this floor division will do is, it is just like the normal division, but the difference is whatever the decimal values that you're going to get, it will be rounding it off to the nearest value, or it will be removing it. That is how it will be giving you the value. So if you want the value to be exact, then you use the normal division. But if you want it to be rounding off and removing the decimal values, then you use a double forward slash, which calls as a floor division. Okay, so this is how you will be using the arithmetic operators. Now let's see a couple of examples, and we'll try to understand how exactly it is being done. So here is a simple example where I'm trying to store a couple of values in terms of variables, where these are normal number variables in which I'm storing a single entity of a number, and in order to reuse it, you will be pretty much running it. Now let me take it up. So I have to create a file called a name with the extension .py. So let's try to go through this one by one. So here, the very first line specifies that this is the directive which specifies which Python to use to execute this. And in that, we have created three variables, where there is a variable called A, and we are assigning a value called 21 to it, and a variable B for which value 10, and there is a variable called C, and for which we are putting a value 0. Okay, now if you want to add these two numbers, then pretty much if you say A plus B, then what will happen? It will be trying to give us the output of A plus B. What will be that? It will be 21 plus 10, and that will be 31, right? Now, why is that I am giving it in this way? Now, here we are actually doing two things. So whenever you have an equal sign, what does it mean? So if you remember on the basics of variable in the last session, then we are going through, I was saying, first of all, when you have an equal, it means you are trying to assign a value to a variable, where the left hand side is the variable for which you are assigning the value of the right hand side. Correct? Just like this. So what you are doing here, you are trying to create a variable called A, and for that you are assigning a value called 21. So left hand side is the name of the variable and right hand side is the value. But in our case, I have not given a value, but I am trying to give a statement which is trying to add two values. So the logic is the same, but the difference is now it will not just store it as A plus B. Instead, what it is going to do is it is going to check. So what is A? The value of A is 21, so it will replace it here. Then the value of B is 10, it will replace. Now, since you have given the operator called plus, it is going to add this 2, and then the value that you are going to get is stored on the right hand side. So now if you see, the value of C is going to be 10 plus 21. And now you are also replacing the value of C with 0 to this. So anytime if you replace or reassign a value, the latest value is what it will be getting it. So now if you do a print, what it will do, it will just say for your first line, the value of C is what? You will be getting the output as value of C is 10 plus
21 10.
Okay. Then let's try to write. So now when you get, you will get the value of C is how much? 31. Okay.
Wait,
Then after this, we know that Python will be executing everything line by line. So now it will come to this. In this line, what is that we have given? We have given something as C equal to A minus B. First thing what it will do is, it will evaluate whatever you have on the right hand side, and whatever value that you get, it will get stored on the left hand side variable. Okay, so that way, now what is A? A is 21. So 21 minus B is 10. Why don't I change that? Okay, so this is going to be 30. And for the next line, what is the value of B? Sorry, C is A minus B. So that will be 20 minus 10, and that will be 10. So the value of C now will be 10. Okay. So what will happen? That will get printed when you enter this. Then, if you want to multiply these numbers, once again, what you are doing, you are saying C equal to A star B, which means A multiplied by B. So it will be taking 20 multiplied by 10. So that way it will be how much? 200. Okay. So now when you print, the value of C will be 200. Okay. So once again, now it will come here. This time, what is the value of A? Once again, it's going to be C. A is 20 divided by 10. So internally, the output of that is how much? 2. So the value of C, then it will be printing it as 2, wherein it will say line 4, the value of C is whatever the output that you are getting it. Okay. And then you are going to do a module of this. So when you do a module, what will happen? So A module of B, which means if you are dividing A by B, so that is 20 by 10, the module of that will be how much? The return, whether you are getting a 0 or non-zero value. So pretty much it will be putting up only that. So now, so let's execute only this and see the output before typing all these things. Do you want it this way, or is this better? Okay, so now if I run python 1.py, so the module or the modulus of this, that is the remainder of 20 divided by 10 is actually, it's a clean divisible, because so 20 divided by 10 is 2 times, so you do not have any more remainder there. So that is why the modulus of this is going to be 0, whereas you can see the output what you're getting is exactly the arithmetic operation. So that is how, when you are doing a arithmetic operation, in order to capture it, you will be storing it into a variable, and then you can use that variable to print or use that value further. Okay, so that's how anything on the right hand side will get evaluated, and that value will get stored in the left hand side. Whereas every time you update the value of that will be overwritten with the current value. Okay, getting it? Now let's try. Did you get that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's try to run the remaining one also. Okay, so this time I'll give little more simple value so that it will be easy for us to see the output. So you can see now that the exponential value that you're getting is pretty much 8. And the same way, when you do a 10 divided by 5, you're going to get a simple output as 2. So that's how, when you want to perform a arithmetic operation, you have to literally use only numbers. Now, if you try to do the same thing against string, then it will give you a error. Okay, so arithmetic operations literally means you have to use only the numbers. What are the operations that you can perform on string? That we will see it later, but let's focus majorly on the comparison of only the numbers, where you want to do certain arithmetic operations like addition, division, or subtraction, pretty much. Okay, so here, when you are using a value like a set, it's not mandatory that you should be using only 2 operands. The minimum operands for an operator is 2. You can literally have more than 2 also, which means now here, if you want to add a number, let's say, you can add it like this also. So you can have more than 2 operands, but at any point of time, if you want to work on an operator, you need a minimum of 2 operands. So anything if you take, it needs 2 operands, but overall you can have as many operators by adding many operands in together. So now it will add all these 3 values if you had a variable, and it will store that into the variable called C. Okay, clear with
Yes, sir.
arithmetic
Yes,
operation?
sir.
Now the next thing is comparison operator. So when you want to compare two values that is present in a variable, now literally when I say variable, it is not mandatory that again it has to be variable. You can directly try to compare two values, but in Python or in any scripting, we know that we are not going to directly use some values. Instead, we are going to use a variable, store the value in it, and trying to compute that. So that is the main purpose of why we use a variable. So pretty much when you're working on operators, you'll be literally trying to work against a variable only. So that way, now, if you want to compare two operators, if you want to compare two variables, then you will be using the comparison operator. So the different kind of comparison operators that we have is double equal to. Now the double equal to will represent and try to compare whether the operand that you have on the left hand side is equal to operand on the right hand side. And if both of them are equal, then it will be returning a value called true, which means that both of them are equal. Now remember, you have to use a double equal to, because if you use a single equal to, what will happen? For example, let's say a equal to 10 and b equal to 20. Okay, if I say a double equal to b, this means you are trying to compare if a is equal to b. Try to understand the word. You are trying to compare if a is equal to b. Now the same thing, if you use a single equal to, what does it mean? Any guess?
We are telling that A is equal to B. We are not comparing. I mean, that is a false statement, right?
No, because it gives the same meaning. What exactly is the difference? Because even here you are saying a is equal to b, a is equal to b, but
There we are, if there we'll use if, I mean.
the comparison, okay,
Yeah.
comparing whether a is equal to b. Okay, now whereas here you are not comparing, you are assigning a value like this. So when you give a single equal to, what you are doing here, you are basically taking the value on the right hand side and assigning it to the left hand side. Literally, that is what the meaning here. So in this way, now what you are seeing is a equal to b. That is correct, which means now you take the value of b and you are assigning b to a. So which means now if you see the output what is stored in a, you will be getting this is equivalent to saying as a equal to 20. So when you say a single equal to, it will assign the value, whereas if you want to compare, then you will use double equal to. So that is why whenever you are creating a variable and trying to store some value, all the times you are saying single equal to. Even on the previous example, we use symbol equal to. That is because anything on the right hand side will get evaluated and stored for the left hand side. Getting the difference on the single
Yes, Adam.
and the double equal to? So single means you are actually assigning. The double means you are actually comparing it. Okay. Same way now, if you want to check whether the opposite of if both are equal, that is if you want to check if a is not equal to b, because it is not always mandatory once again to say whether a is equal to b. Now let's say the condition that you want to check is whether a is not equal to b. So in that case, now you will use a exclamatory mark equal to, so that you are negating the meaning of equal to. Negating means opposite of the particular value. So if you are trying to compare this way, then if a is not equal to b, then this statement will be giving you an output of true or false. Because now, unlike the arithmetic operator, you are not returning any value, because arithmetic operators basically do some computing. But when you are comparing, you are not doing any computing, but internally you are going to return some value. That is, when you are trying to compare two operands, Python will be returning a value which is either true or false, and that depends on what kind of condition you are using and what is the result of it. So in this condition, now if the value of a is equal to b, then the return value which Python is going to give you for this statement is true. And in case if it is not equal to, then it will be false. Whereas in this, the statement that you are trying to check is whether a is not equal to b. Though if a is not equal to b, then this condition will return a true. Remember, and if a is equal to b, then this condition will give false, because the condition what you have given is such a way. Now here, if you say 10 equal to 20, now what will happen? This is actually a false, Whereas if you say 10 is not equal to 20, yes, that is correct. 10 is not equal to 20. So this statement is going to return you true. Okay. The same way now, if you say 10 equal to 10, this statement is true because 10 is equal to true. Whereas if you say 10 not equal to 10, then no, it is not the correct condition. So it is going to return a false. So remember, based on the condition that you are giving, the values will be either true or false. Okay. So the same way now, if you want to check whether a value is greater than another value, then you will use the greater than symbol, wherein if you say a variable greater than the other variable, and if a is greater than b, then it is going to return a true. Suppose if a is not greater than b, then it is going to be false, or pretty much any other condition where a is not greater than b, it is going to give a false. Okay. Same way, if you want to check if a is less than b, then you will use less than symbol, where only if a or the value of a is less than the value of b, the condition is, or this statement is going to return a true value, and for all other conditions it is going to give a false. Sometimes you want to mix both of these values. That is, if you want to check if one value is greater than and equal to, then you will say this symbol of the arrow mark and equal to. So this way, only if A is greater than or equal to B, then it is going to be a true. So for example here, so if I say 10 is greater than or equal to 10, then what will be this? This will be true because 10 is not greater than 10, but 10 is equal to 10. So the condition is true. Whereas the same thing, if you say this will be false, that is because 10 is neither greater than 20 nor 10 is equal to 20. So you can do two comparison at the same point of time. So any one of them, if it is going to match, then it will be returning a true. Okay. The same way, if you want to compare less than equal to, then you can use. So only if either a is less than b or a is equal to b, then it is going to be a true. So same thing here. If I say 10 less than equal to 10, what will this be? This will be true because 10 is not less than 10, but 10 is equal to 10. Same thing. Now, what will be this output? Will it be true or false?
This will be, I mean, false.
How? First one.
Because, okay, if one condition is true, yeah.
Is 10 less?
The first condition is itself false, yeah.
It is true.
Oh, it's true actually, sorry.
Because 10.
Sorry. If one condition is true, that will be
That was
true, right, yeah.
If any one of the condition is matching, then it is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's try to simply write a program. But now, when you're trying to write a program using a comparison, now you are going to return a value which is true or false, and you're not doing a computing, right? So that is when you are trying to run a operator using which you will be doing a comparison, then you cannot directly store some value against it because you are not returning a value. You are just returning whether the condition is true or false in a logical way. So that is when what you have to do is you have to use something called as a conditional statement. Okay. So let's not worry about the conditional statement for now. We will see the syntax, but the logic what we want to do now is we will execute this, and only if the condition is matching, then whatever the corresponding line that we have, it will get executed. Okay. So quickly I'll just show you this, and when I go through the condition, we will come back and see this once again. So here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to give a value of A and B. The first thing that I'm checking is either A is equal to B. So is the condition true or false now? So only if this
False.
is true, it will print. Yeah. So in this case,
Yeah.
the condition is not true, so it will not get printed. The next thing is A not equal to B. Is this condition true or false?
True. True.
Yeah, because 21 is not equal to B. So now this statement will get printed. Same way, is this condition true? That is A
False.
less than equal to B? Yes. So now correspondingly, you can see that you will be getting only one line of output because all these conditions are false. So pretty much focus on this. This is how you do a comparison. And to understand this, we'll go deeply into the conditional statement wherein we will see what is the syntax of this. So clear with the condition, right? How do you use?
Yes, Adam.
Okay. Now, we also have another operator, that is logical operator. Now, just like the conditional operator, suppose if you want to check for more than one condition, then you can make use of the logical operator. Okay. Now, that is how, let's say, for example, here in this, we used directly two logics. That is, A is greater than B or A is less than equal to B. But now, if you have two conditions separately that you want to check. Now, let's say I want to check whether A is less than B, and at the same time, I also want to check whether A is less than some other number. So like that, if you have two conditions to check, then what is that you're going to do? Now, an example here, let's say A equal to 10 and B equal to 20. So one condition that I want to do is if A is less than 20, my condition is true. Okay. But once again, I also want to check. Now, let's say you also have one more number. Okay. Now, I also want to check whether A is also less than C or 30, whatever it is. So like this, if you have more than one condition to check, then you will use logical operator, where for the logical operators, we have three types, that is and, or, and not. So how this condition is going to match is, suppose if two conditions that you are trying to compare, and if both are true, only then the resulting total condition will be true. So in my case, now let's say if I want to compare this as well as I want to compare this, and if I want both of them to be returning true, only then I want to say a condition is A is less than everything, for example. Then how will you do? Then this is one condition, correct? And this is another condition. Now what I'm saying is I want to say that A is lesser than all the numbers. How will you say? Only if you are matching both the conditions. Suppose if you match it separately, you are not comparing both of them at the same time, correct? So that is when what we will do now is, what I can do is I can combine this using the logical operator. So wherein if my condition is both of them has to be true, then I will use a AND, where here if only both of them are returning true, then the total condition that you have is going to be true. So for example, in this case, is A less than B? Is it a true or false?
Yes, true.
Yeah. So it is true. And is A less than C?
True.
True. So only if you have both of them as true, because AND means you have a true and a true, then the result of this will be a true.
True.
Okay. So at any point of time, if any one of the value is false, then the AND will return it in false, because AND means both of them should be of the true statement. Okay. So let's say
Yeah.
The same thing if I use one more value. Now, let's say the condition that I'm giving here is A is greater than B. Okay, so this case, what will happen? What is the first condition? Is it true or false?
False.
False. And the next one is true. So now, when you use the and, when you have a false and a true, then it will always return in false.
False.
Your condition is false. The same way, suppose if I give both of them as false, now what will happen is A greater than B, false, and is A greater than C, false. So this will also return in false.
False.
Only if both the conditions are true, then the AND will return true. So that is how, when you have two conditions to compare, you can pretty much try to use AND. Okay. Now, if let's say you don't want both of them to be true, but if you are satisfied if at least one of them is true, then you will use the OR operand. Okay, so what OR operand will, I mean, the OR operator, that is logical operator, will do is it will try to compare two conditions.
If both are false, it returns false, or else it is true for any case.
Yeah, if any one of the value is true, it is quite happy to take it up. So in that case, now the same thing, if you're trying to compare this with OR, so if I say OR here, what will happen? So in this condition, what will happen is true.
First two are true, next is false, last one is false.
True and true is true, it is true. The same way here now, if you say this is false or this is true, but the condition is either this should be true or this should be true. You have one true, so the result is true here. Same way now here, if you say false or false, obviously it is false, because when you are trying to work on a OR operator, any one of them should be true, and then the resultant condition value will be true. Okay, so that is how the difference between the OR operator and AND operator. Okay, the same thing now, if you use a NOT, then it will be the reverse of what you are doing. Okay, so in certain conditions, what you want to do is you want to give an AND or OR, but on top of that you want to negate it. So that is when, now on top of this completely, if you say NOT, then it will be giving you the reverse of thing. So now whatever value that you're getting is true, so it means not of true. Okay, then what will be the not of true? It will be false. The same way, if you say not of this condition completely, then the output whatever you're going to get, the not of that. Not means reverse of that. That means this will be once again false. The same thing, if you say not for this, then the not of false means it is true. So that is how, by using a not, you can reverse the complete output. So sometimes when you're writing a huge complex program, you can simply manipulate the output based on how you want. So because sometimes you would write a logic, but at the end you will be getting some other value. So now it will be complex for you to keep changing everything between, and it is going to be time consuming in debugging. So instead of that, simply now if you are expecting the always reverse of what value that you're getting, then you can completely reverse the logic by using not. So what it will do is, the total computing value, whatever you are going to get, it will just reverse that. That is what we call it as not. Getting it?
Yeah. Yes, I sent you.
Okay. Now, once again, before doing it, first we will try to go through the conditional statement, and using which we will be actually taking help of the operators and the variables, and we will be doing the program. So that way, in Python, or pretty much in any kind of scripting, you can always do some conditional statements. So when I say conditional statements, these are nothing but the decision making pattern what you're going to give. So what do you mean by a decision making? Now, let's say you have some statements. So as of now, if you have seen, if you give 10 lines, what Python is going to do, it is going to execute everything one by one, right? But now, instead of executing a statement directly, if you want to execute the statement only based on a condition that it is matching or not, then you will basically basically you will use this conditional statement. So what does this conditional statement allows us? The conditional statements allows us to take a decision whether that Python statement or the Python line of code should be executed or not. Okay, wherein it is not just one line of code, even you can give a block of code or a group of code and say whether to run it or not depending on a condition. So such a kind of decision making is possible in Python. So now, so the simple logic that you will be applying is, now you have to group a certain lines of code or one line, whatever it is, and then for that you will be giving a condition. So a simple logic is, now if a condition is matched, then you go and execute the code or the lines of code that you have given. And in case if the condition is not matched, then it will never touch the code and it will go proceeding with the other lines of code. Suppose if you have 10 lines of code and out of that, let's say this. Now let's say you have line 1, line 2, line 3. Okay, now suppose you want to execute line 2 only if a condition is matching. Then I can say this, that I will apply a condition to this. Okay, and only if the condition is matching, what will happen after executing the line 2, it will come and execute the line 2. After executing the line 1, Python will check for the condition. If it is matching, and then it will execute line 2. Suppose if the condition is not matching, then it will never execute this line. It will completely skip the block of statement or that group of statement that you have associated to the condition, and then it will jump on to the further lines of code that you have which is outside the condition. So that is how you can execute a single line or a group of lines of code, which we call it a statement in Python, depending on a condition. Okay, now when you give a condition, the value of the condition is basically a true or false. Okay, so depending on that, it will be deciding whether to run the line of code inside the condition or to skip that. So in that case, what kind of values are considered as a true statement in Python? So generally, any non-zero value or any non-null value will be considered as true. Okay, so if you are trying to compare two numbers, once again you are going to get a true. But if you are trying to do a computing like a plus b or a minus b or something like that, you are going to return a value. You can even use that, but in that case, if you are putting a value to be comparing, or if you want to put a value as a condition, and if that value is a non-zero and it is also not a null value, then it is going to be always considered as a true condition. Okay, and if it is either 0 or null, then it is considered as a false. So that means now, other than the comparison, if you are trying to compute a value and if you give a value there, if it is a 0 or a null, it is false. But any other non-zero value, which could be 1, 10, 100, 1000, anything that you give, or a null, will be considered as a condition as true. Okay, and the same way, now you can also use a negation or not. So if you say a not of a condition, it will be always taking the reverse value of that. So just like if you get the condition value as 0, and if you say not of 0, then what will be the not of 0? It will be the true condition. The same thing, if you give a non-zero value and if you say not of that, that means the non-zero value is a true condition and not of true is false. So the condition will be taking as false and it will never go inside. So you can pretty much do the same negation in the condition also. Okay. So the question now which will come is, how is that you are going to use this operator? So now that is when, to do a decision making or a control statement, we have three kinds of statements in which simply we are going to use something called as a if statement. Okay, so using these three or pretty much any one among this, we will be trying to decide whether a particular line of code has to be run or not. Okay, so let's try to see one by one. Before that, it's clear on when do you want to decide and how is that you will be writing a code.
Yes, Adam.
Okay, now let's take the first conditional statement or the simple conditional statement. So the simple conditional statement what we have is called as a if statement. Okay, so what do you mean by a if statement? A if statement is nothing but, for a statement you will say a condition and you will be giving a line of code that you want to execute. So only if the condition is matching, then the Python will go inside that block of lines associated to the condition and it will execute it. If not, it will not go to the block of code. It will directly skip and proceed further that you have after the condition. Okay, so that is the simplest way of giving it. And what is the syntax for using it? So if you're using a if statement or a condition, you will always begin with the word called if, a space, and then you will be giving the condition that you want to match, where a condition can be a simple arithmetic operation or a comparison, or you can even directly give a single value, because anything that you give here, if it is a non-zero and a not null, it will be considering it as a true. Okay, so further associated with this condition, you have to give the line of statements belonging to it. Now when you are giving the line of code that has to be executed only if the condition is matching, now that line has to be properly indented. Only then Python will know that this line of code is associated with this particular condition. Which means now here, let's say you have a condition, right? For this condition, if you say if condition and a colon, and if you want to give the line, basically you have to give beneath. But if you give it like this, it means now this is part of your main program. It is not part of your condition. So if this line belongs to this block of condition, then you have to give a indentation, where it doesn't really matter on how many spaces you are giving, but whatever space you are giving, it has to be equally used for the further lines. Suppose if you have more than one line to be executed. Okay, now I can give like this. So the indentation is important, because only with the indentation the Python will understand that, okay, now for this condition it is beginning here and it is ending here, and the lines for this is with the indentation. So once again, if you come back to the beginning, the indentation represents that you are continuing with your main program. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
So let's try to use a simple statement and see how it is going to work. So in this, let's debug what is that we have written. So now, first, I have given a variable called var1 and I'm putting a value called 10. And there is variable called 2, and for that I'm giving a value 0. Now, here I am defining a if statement, and for that I'm giving a condition. Okay, and followed by that, I'm giving 2 lines of code that has to be associated with it, which means now if this condition is matching, you should execute these 2 lines of code. And suppose if this condition is not true, then it will not do anything until here. So after completing the if, whatever you have further, it will go up. Okay, so that way, what is this condition we have given? I am just saying where 1. So if you say just where 1, what is it going to do?
It is going to check whether it is, I mean, it is null, non-zero value. So
When
it will print the
where 1, what is this? It is a variable. And wherever
yeah,
it is a variable, what will Python do? It will replace the value stored in it. So what is the value of where 1?
10.
10. So now, what is the condition? You are just saying it as 10. So it is like an output. So what is 10? It is a non-zero value. So
Yeah,
it means that the condition what you are giving is a true condition.
true. I mean,
So it will go inside and execute both of this line. Okay. The same way, suppose if you say the value of this is var2, what will happen? It will be 0. And any value
yeah,
which is 0 will be
false.
false and it will not execute. Okay. So that way, first it will execute these 2 lines. Then it will proceed here. And in this, what is the condition you are saying? A equal to B. Okay, now this is a comparison. Now, is A equal to B? A equal to 0?
Where is A and B? We didn't assign A and B, right?
What is this condition? Now, let's break this up.
Just assume comparing A and B.
Wait, that's what I'm saying. Let's take this out first. You are going to put it this way. First, it's going to execute this. Now, what is this? This is a comparing. What is that you are comparing? A is, sorry, it's not A.
Yeah, where 1 equal to where 2.
Where 1, where. Okay, so this way now, if you're going to compare, what will happen? First, it is going to compare.
This code,
So what is
yeah,
10? And is it equal to where 2? No,
no,
this is not equal. So what will be the output of this condition? It is going to be a
false.
false. So now you will get a value of false. So because of which the condition is not matching, so it will never execute this. Okay. Now, if you have any lines further, then it is going to execute them by not printing this. So let's say I'll simply print end of script. So now what should be the output? It will come here, print this line, and it is not going to print this line, and it will print this line. Okay. Very good. It says there's a non-ASCII character. On line 10 it says. What is the non-ASCII character I've given? While copy pasting. This is the toughest part in copy pasting.
Okay. How much is it? How much when you purchase it?
Let me copy paste from this.
June, October? I think there is something wrong with hyphen.
Okay, I think so. This. So you can see now that
Yeah.
got this line executed because the condition is true. The same the condition here. What is happening now? That we do not have the condition matching. It is printing this, and then further it's going ahead with this line. The same thing here. If I say where to, you can see that this condition is also false because that is a 0, which means it is a false condition.
Yeah, Adam.
Bring it.
Yes.
Okay. Now we have one more statement, that is if else statement. So what is the difference between if and if else? So when you're trying to put a condition, so far what we saw is if the condition is matching, then you will have a line of code associated to it, and then it will go inside and execute. And if it was not matching, then it used to go further, and whatever was the code in the main program, it was executing, right? So in the same way, now if you have a requirement in which, let's say you had line 1 and then you had a condition, and for which you are saying that if the code or the condition is matching, then you have to execute this. That is what we said. If not, go ahead with line 3. Now suppose if this condition is not true, then I want to do something else instead of that. So here only if the condition is matching, it is doing this. But if I want a scenario where if the condition is matching, do this. Suppose if the condition is not matching, then I want to do something else. That is when you will be adding a else statement along with this, and it will print this. Okay, so that is when you can make use of a if and else, where you will give another group of statement to the total condition by adding it to else. So what it will do is, if this condition is matching, then it will execute this block of lines, and suppose if this condition is not matching, then it will come and it will execute this. So that is how, based on the condition, it will be running this. Okay, so it is not now going to directly come to this line. So if the condition matches, it will execute this. In case if it is not matching, it will execute this. So that is when, whenever you have a scenario where if the condition is not matching, or based on the condition, if it is not true, if you want to execute something, it will then come up here and then you can execute it. Okay, now to do that, simply add a keyword called else in the same indentation, and then once again for the else also, the indentation has to be just similar to how you have followed, so that Python will clearly know that you are giving the block of code for this. Okay, now in this example, if you see here, so we were trying to compare it, right? So if we see, we are saying is this variable equal to this variable. If it is there, you print. If not, it was not printing anything, right? You can see it was not printing anything. Suppose if I want to print clearly saying that if it is equal to, print equal to. If it is not, then give me the message saying that it is not equal to. So this case, now after this, I can add a else, and in this I can give a print saying that 2, or this much is pretty much the third line, and I'll say variable is not equal to variable 2. Okay, so now what will happen? If the condition is matching, it will print this. If not, it will directly come, and whatever that you have given in the else, it will print that. You can see it is printing this. Getting it? So like this, now you can give a else, attach it to a if condition, so it'll always run if the condition is not matching. And remember, you can have only one else for a if condition, so it will be a if not else. Okay, so you cannot give multiple else means if this is not true, then always come to this location and execute this. Okay, so that is how for every if condition you can have a else which will work if the condition is not being satisfied or not matching. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
Now let's say you have one more requirement where rather than just blindly executing this, what if you want to match for one more condition? That could be possible, right? Now let's say you are trying to compare a number, or let's say you are trying to check whether one variable is greater than other variable. So what will happen in that case? Now if the condition what you are giving in this one so if the condition what you are giving here is if a is greater than b, then you print some line saying a is greater than b. Suppose if a is not greater than b, it will come always and it will say, let's say a is less than b. Okay, now this could be one condition. Now let's say a is 10 and b is 20. Now what will happen in that? I will just say here a is greater, else I will say b is greater. Okay, so that way now the condition is fine, because if a is greater than b, it will print this. If not, always it will say b is greater. This is fine with this condition. But now what if I give the value like this? Is this condition true? I mean, the value whatever you are going to get is correct. So what will be the output of this? Is a greater than b? No, because 20 is equal to 20. So the output what you will get is b is greater. Yeah, as per the program it is working fine, but it actually doesn't give us a proper meaning because you are not doing a condition. So that is when you can add one more condition for the same if, where you can put it up on the scenario only if this is not matching, then I need a second condition to match. So that case, now along with the first condition on if, you can add one more statement called elif, which is nothing but the else condition. So what this will do is, if this condition is not matching, then you can add one more condition here, and if this condition matches, then you can give some value here, and only if both the conditions are not matching, then it will come to the else, and it will always come in the sequential order. That is, now if I give a condition here as a is less than b, then I will print this. Suppose if it is not, then I'll say a is equal to b. So what will happen now? It will try to check if this condition is matching, it will execute this. If it is not matching, it will come to the second condition and it will check. If this condition is matching, then it will execute this. Suppose if this condition is also not matching, then it will come to the else and execute. Okay, this is one way. And also, suppose if this condition is directly matching, then it will not go through it again because you have completed your condition. So after executing this, it will directly come to the end of the condition and go further. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
So let's try to write the same thing here. I think it's going to be the same problem. Okay, so let's use the same thing here. And okay, and lines. So you can see now what is happening. I've given 10, 10. So neither A is greater than B nor A is less than B. So it is directly printing the else statement. Suppose if any of this condition was matching, it will execute only that and skip everything and directly come to the end of line or the end of script. Okay, now let's change this value and see. So you can see 20 is greater than 10. So the first condition matches. So you're getting the first line to be executed. Okay, and it skips everything and comes to the end of the script. That is the last line. Getting it on when you will be using a if, else if condition. So whenever you have more than one condition to check, and only if this doesn't match, it will come to this. And even if this doesn't match, it will come to the else part.
Yes, Adam.
Clear so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so far, what is that we saw? So whenever you have a condition that you want to execute, and for that condition, we had different kind of statements that we were using, and in which, how is that you are using the condition? You are pretty much using the operators, that is the arithmetic operators or the comparing operators, using which we will try to compare them by giving a condition. Okay. Now further, there is something called as loops. Now let's take a program where you might get a situation in which you want to execute a single line or a group of line again and again for some particular time. Okay, so that is when, if you have such a scenario when you want to repetitively execute the lines of code, then you will be using a concept or a statement called as loops in it. And when you give a group of statement and inside the loop, it will be executing it in a sequential order, and it will be repeating it again and again based on a condition that you're giving. Okay, so now let's say you have some lines of code that you want to execute, and that you put it for a condition. So it is again just like the if, but the difference is you are not running it only once, but you want to repetitively run it until your condition is satisfied. So that way, now for a condition, you will be giving a set of line. In a regular condition, what will happen? You will just come. If the condition is true, you will execute the code and then you will just go out, right? But in a loop, you are not just going to go out, but once you have completed the condition, at the end, you will once again go to the condition and check whether the condition is matching. So until the condition is true, it will keep on executing the same line of code. So that is what we call it as a loop, wherein you continue executing it as long as you want, and only when a condition is false, then it will not go through it further. Then it will go by exiting this condition and further with the main program. So that way you can execute a set of lines again and again until a condition is matching. Okay, so that is what we call it as a loop. Now, when you say a loop, there are different kind of loops that you will be using. So one among them is while loop. Now let's take a simple example when you want to have a loop. Now, if let's say I want to execute my name 10 times, or let's say you want to do some calculation for an employee, some data that has to be done, some computing has to be done for one employee. The same thing you are going to repeat it for 10 employees. Then rather than writing the code 10 times, you can basically reuse the same thing by passing different values for 10 different employees. So that is how you can reuse the code to keep running it until a particular condition. Okay, so whenever you are trying to use, one of the default looping mechanism is while loop. So what exactly is a while loop? Now if you look, the condition for the while loop is, or the statement that you will be giving is, you will be giving as a keyword called while, and then the condition that you're giving, and then whatever statements that you're going to give. It was just like the if, but the difference here is, now if the Python is going to come to this line and it will check here. If the condition is true, then it will come and execute. Yeah, that is the default. But since it is a while, after completing it, it will not go further, but it will once again go to the beginning of this condition and then check whether the condition is once again true. So as long as the condition is true, it will come here and then it will go here, come here, and it will be going on executing it again and again. So that is why we call it as a loop. And at some point of time when it goes here and the condition is not true, then it will not execute. It will come out and it will proceed further. Okay, so such a way of executing a line of code again and again is what we call it as a loop. And in that, if you are matching a condition, and if only that condition matches, if you want to execute this, it is going to be called as a while loop. Okay, so this will be proceeding like this until the condition is matching. Okay, now let's try to write a simple program and see. So now what is that I've written? So I have given a value or a variable called count, and to that it is 0. And the condition, what I'm saying here is, I'm saying while statement, and the condition is count less than 9. And if the condition is true, then it should come and print. Okay, but after printing it, let's say I want to give end of script. So on a regular if condition, what will happen? After matching this, it will come and execute this, right? But instead, what this will do is, it will once again go to the top, that is the beginning of the condition, and in this, it will once again check for the condition. So like this, until this condition is matching and it is true, it will keep on executing this. Okay, so see this. What is happening? Do you see, is there a problem here? Because the logic is correct, but what is exactly happening?
It is keep on executing.
It is actually going on an infinite loop, right?
Yeah.
Why is it?
Name. Yeah.
I'm closing it. Why is it? It is because logic. If this condition is true, you run this. But after completing it, since you have mentioned it as a while, it will once again go here and check for the condition. And after checking the condition, it will, if it is true, it will execute. So like this, after executing this, every time if you go back, the value of count is always 0. That is why the condition is always going to be true. So that is why it will never come out of it. So such a kind of condition what you give is what we call it as a infinite loop. So when you are giving a while, that is a loop, we have to make sure that we need to break the condition in such a way that it will just execute it only the number of times that we want it to execute. Okay, so now this condition is completely valid, but it doesn't have a meaning in it. So if my interest is to print the line 9 times, then I can use this. So now my interest, what I want to do is, I want to print the number, or I want to print this line, let's say 10 times. Okay, then it makes me a meaning that I want to use it. But what is the condition I have? I want to print it only 10 times. But what will happen in our case? Every time you run this, it will come and then it will go up and it will be printing. But the value of count will always be 0. So it will be printing more than 10 times. In fact, it will be doing an infinite time. So now we have to put the line in such a way, the statement should be breaking it up exactly at 10. So now, at some point of time, if the value of count is greater than 9 or equal to 9, this condition will fail, right? For example, here, see this. If I give this value of count equal to 9, okay, now what will be the output of this? You can see first it comes here, the condition is true, so it goes inside and it prints this. After printing, the value of count is 9, then it will once again go up here, and now what will happen? Is 9 less than 9? No. So the condition is false, because of which it is not printing and it is going up here. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
So like this, the first thing. So when count was 0, 0 less than 9, no, because at first the count was 0. So 0 less than 9 that you did here, yes. So because of this, it printed the C, and then you are trying to do a count equal to 9. So now is 9 less than 9? No, it is not. So that is why it is not printing, and it is going to end of the script. So that is why you can see there is only one print happening. So now, using this logic, let us add something more. And now, what is that I want to do is, I want to print this 10 times. So how is that I can make it to print 10 times? And at the same time, I know every time it is going to go through this when the condition is true. So let's add a simple logic where now if I say count equal to count plus 1, what is it going to do? Can I use this logical operator now? Now, what will be the meaning of this? So I can give like this. Here, I'm going to say count equal to count plus 1. So now let's try to debug this. How will it be printing? So first time when you come, count is 0, correct? Then what will happen? While count is less than 9. So what is the value? 0 less than 9? Yes. So it will print. Okay. And what it will print? It will print count. What is the value of count? 0. Then now what is count? Count equal to count plus 1. So count equal to count plus 1. Now when you give like this, we know whatever you give on the right hand side will be evaluated and it will be stored on the left hand side. Now because of which what will happen? What is count? Count equal to 0. So 0 plus 1. Okay, and what is the value?
Yes.
So now
1.
be overwritten with 1. Okay, so once again it will go back after completing this, and now what is the condition? Count is less than 9. Now what is the value of count? 1 less than 9? Yes, it is 9. So it will come inside, it will execute this line, so it will say print 1, and then once again you will say count equal to count plus 1, and this time what is count? Count is 1, so 1 plus 1, that will be 2. So now if you see, count will be 2. So it is completed. It will once again go to the condition and it will check count less than 9. And what is count? 2 less than 9. Is it less? Yes. It will print 2. And then now if you see, count equal to count plus 1. So that will be 2 plus 1 and that will become 3. So now count will be 3. So like this, it will be keep on going, and at some point of time, count will be 9 exactly, correct? That is 8 plus 1. So at that time, count is 9. So if it goes up, you can see 9 is less than 9. No, the condition is going to fail. Then it will print this. Okay, so that way it will be printing it exactly 10 times. Basically, if I give 9, it is going to be 9 times. If I wanted 10, I can make it as 10 here. Or I can change the condition now. Let's say I want to print it 10 times. So what is the condition I can give so that it will print 10 times? If I simply say equal to, the condition is going to match one more time, right? So that way now the 9 will also get matched, so it will go inside, and now 9 plus 1 will be 10. Now 10 is neither less than or equal to 9, the condition will fail. So now the output, if you do, you will be getting it as 10 outputs or 10 lines. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
Getting the difference on how a while or a loop should work. So remember, whenever you are working on a, you should always make sure you give a condition within that in such a way that the condition will be manipulated based on the number of times you want to execute. If not, it doesn't make a meaning and it will go into an infinite loop and it will never end. So you should always give a condition in such a way that it will always be executing only based on that, and depending on it you have to keep incrementing or changing the value, and whenever the condition is met it will not run beyond it. Okay, and the condition will false and it will proceed further. Now sometimes you might also want to use a else statement for the same while loop. So that is when, now if you want to execute the else statement if the condition is false. Now if you see here, if the condition is not matching, it is directly coming to the end of statement. But if you want to execute something else on top of it, you can add it. So to do it, just simply add a else statement and you give a message to it and it will print. For example, now I can say else, and I'll say print count has become greater than 9. It's just a statement that you want to print. So you can see now it will execute this, but at the end, when the condition is not matched, only at that point of time it will execute, just like an if condition. So until the condition is matched, it will go through this statement again and again, and when the condition is not matched, it will execute this, and after that it will proceed further. Okay, so that's how for some scenarios you might give a else statement for your loop also. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Adam.
Okay.
Okay. Now we saw a loop through while. Now when you're giving a while, you actually gave a condition. Now sometimes you might have to do a iteration, that is the looping, where you do not have a condition. Okay, but if you have a value against which you want to run the loop, then you will be using this for loop. A simple example would be, now I wanted to print a value 10 times. Then I know the condition here is 10. But let's say I will give you force, like I said, an example that you want to do some computing for an employee. And now you really don't know how many employees are there, but you will give the name of the employee. So that way, if I give you 3 names of the employees, now I know there are 3 names or 3 values. That means the iteration or the looping has to be done 3 times. Okay, so that way, now instead of a condition, if you have a set of values, then you can try to go through the go through the loop based on the number of values that you have. So only at that kind of scenario, when you have a set of values, then you can use the for loop. Whenever you have a condition, you will be using while, but whenever you have values, then you will be using the for loop. Now, when you are passing a for loop, using a for loop, if you want to pass a value, now we know that in Python, how is that you are going to store more than one value? If it is a single value, you will store it in a number or in a string variable. If it is more than one, how is that you're going to store a value? A simple value is a list. Do you remember? A list is nothing but a collection of ordered items that you can keep, right? So that is how, if you have a list of values against which you want to execute a loop, then you can use for. So the condition is going to be the same. The statement is also something going to be similar, where you will use the keyword called for, and then you will use the value and the statement. But in addition, you are going to use something called as a iterating variable, and the keyword will be like this. Now, why is that you are using this additional? Because in the while, if you see, you just gave while and the condition. In the same way now, what we are going to do is, instead of the condition here, I am going to give you the list of values or the values here. But additionally, why do you want to use this? So if you look at the meaning of this, you are actually running a for loop against a set of values, right? Ideally, you are running it because you are having two values or three values. So the necessity of that three values is you want to use that three values and do something. That is why you are saying three. So that is when, if you are using these three values in an iteration, when is that you are going to use that values one by one? So that is when you will be creating a variable or assigning a variable for the for loop, so that for every iteration, it will be taking up the value that you provide in the sequence one by one. Now, to put it up in a simple way, now let's say you have a for, and for that I'm giving a value like 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is the value, and simply if I say print, what is that it has to print? My interest is I want to go through this 3 times and basically print the values that I've given in this. So that way, now how is that I'm going to get the value exactly that I'm passing this? So that is what I will use a variable here and store it like this. So that way, now when you first come here, if you say that, okay, you have a value called 1, 2, 3, so it will take the first value, and if you put it as where here, then what it will do, first it will come pick the iteration for 1. Okay, so that way it will assign the variable to be 1, and then when it comes here, the value of where for that block of statement or for that iteration is 1, so it will print it as 1. As soon as you complete, when it goes back again, now the value of var will be the second value, so that is 2. So it will say var equal to 2, it will automatically assign. So now within the block of statement, if you use var, then it will print it as 2. So once it is complete, the next iteration, when it goes back to this condition, there is no condition but the set of value, so it will take the next set of value, that is 3. So it will assign it as 3, and then when you print, it will be saying it as 3. So that is how, for each iteration, if you want to pick up each value, then you will be assigning a variable. So that is how, for every time that it goes through, it will be taking value one by one, and it will be stopping this loop exactly as the value completes. Now if you see, there is no fourth value, so ideally it is not going to run the loop for the fourth time. So that is how, based on the number of values you give, the iteration or the loop will happen that many times, and for each time the loop goes, it will be taking value one by one, and if you want to use it, simply put it into a variable, and for every iteration, the value of that variable will be equivalent to what it has picking it up. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
So now, as I said, the value that you're going to pass to a for loop can either be a simple string, or you can give it like a list which will be containing more than one value. So a simple example that we can try is this. So here, what is it going to do? Now, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm creating a for loop where this is the value or the list I'm giving it. Now in this, it is not going to take as one word, but it is going to split it up and it is going to take each letter by letter. And what I'm going to do, that is I'm creating a variable called letter and I'm going to assign. So when first you run this, the variable called letter will take this value and it will be executing this, and in that it will be executing the letter that is first P, and once it completes it will once again go, do you have any other letter? Yes, you have next letter Y, so it will assign it to this and it will come here and print that. Once done, it will go back and it will be doing like this until the letter is N. When you executed this, when it goes back, there is no letter N, so it will stop and come further. And then now in this, if you see, you are giving a list which has 3 values. So in this, it is going to replace this with these 3 values, and there is a variable called fruit that is being assigned to this. So what will happen when you run it first, it will come here, pick the value called banana and it will print this. Done, it will once again go. In this you have the next value called apple, that will get assigned to fruit and it will print. And once it is done, it will go back. You can see there is one more called mango, so it will assign that to fruit and it will print. And once done, it will go back, and if you see there is nothing, so it will come and proceed further. And here, if I say this, so it will come to this after executing this. Okay, so let's run this and see. Do you see the difference?
Yes, I got it.
So exactly based on the values that you give, it will be trying to execute it. Okay, so that's the only difference. So if you have a condition,
Adam, here you gave a statement that for fruit in fruits.
yeah.
How does it know that fruit? I mean, we didn't assign fruit anywhere, right? Okay, I got it. Yeah, sorry, I was confused. Yeah.
So it will get assigned
Hello?
when you run this. That is the concept of
Yeah.
same like how you give letter.
Yeah, I got
Every
it.
time you run, it will be taking the value and assigning to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is specific only for this iteration, not above that. Getting it?
Yeah, Adam.
Okay. Now, there's other simple 2 things. I thought let me take it up. It will be more easy for you to understand. Okay. Now, if you are using a condition or if you're using a list of statements for executing a loop, okay. Now, it is not necessary that you should always go through all the condition or all the values and complete the loop. In between, if you want to come out of that particular loop for some special condition, then how is that you're going to do? So that is when you are having something called as a loop control statement. So a loop control statement specifically changes the execution in a normal sequence. So rather than going through one by one against a condition or against a set of values, what this looping control will do is it will tell you to come out of that particular iteration of the loop what you have given. Okay, so that way now we have 2 kinds of control statements that you can use which will change the looping behavior by default and come out of it. Okay, now what are those 2 statements? The first statement is a break statement. Now, what is a break statement? The syntax is simply break. So, at any point of time within the statements, that is the line of code for this condition or the loop, when you give, what will happen is it will try to break that current loop and it will go further with the next line of code that you have in it. Okay, that means now let's say you have a while condition, okay, and let me compare with this. And in this while, you are giving some condition and then some statement. Okay, let's say statement 1, and then you are saying break and some statement 2. Now what will happen is, and then you have another print something here, end of script. Now when you are running this, wherever you see the break, what it will happen is, and first thing that it will do is, it will try to terminate the current loop on which it is running. Okay, and then after that it will continue the execution at the next line of code after the block, which means it is not going to go back to the condition. It will just completely come out of this loop itself and proceed with the further line. That is further lines of your program. So at any point of time when you want to come out of the condition or the loop itself completely, regardless of where it is, then you can use a break. So remember, break will come out of that condition or the block of statement or the loop itself completely. So now this is part of this group of block, and now this block is part of this condition. So when you say break, no matter where the condition is, it will not once again go back to the condition. It will complete it for this and then complete and proceed further with the next line of code. Getting it? Now let's see an example. So for this, let's say now it is printing every line, okay, but I don't want to print it completely. Now let's say if you are exactly taking the character, which is any one of the character, let's say the character that you want to take is H, okay. So if the letter is H, I don't want to print it at all. If not, you proceed and do everything else. So that is what I want to do. So what I can do is, I can simply add a condition this way. Okay, now what I'll do is, let's say I add a condition to this. So now the first thing is, I'm adding a condition. Now the condition is within the for loop. So first thing I have to do is follow the indentation. So the if has to be in the same line of break, the print, sorry. Now the if needs some condition or the value of statements within it. So inside that, I'm giving it as a break. Okay, let me add one more line to it. So I'm going to say print, I'm breaking the loop. Okay, and I'm giving this. So here, if you see, the meaning of this is a condition where if the variable letter has a value equivalent to H, then it will come and execute this. That I know. So in that, what it is going to do, it is going to print this line and it is going to break. And when it is breaking, it is going to completely end this iteration and it will come to this line. Okay, that way you can break the complete loop at any point of time. And see this how it is going to work now. You can compare the output. It is going through the loop as a normal way, but whenever this condition is matching, it is going to go inside. But in this, if you say a break, it is not going to skip this, but it is going to skip the complete loop itself, as if it is going to bring the condition to the else or the last statement, which means that condition is failed. So that is how the break will completely finish the loop and proceed further. Getting it?
Yes, Adam.
So what does break do? It will complete the entire loop and it will proceed with the next line of code that you have in the program. But if you have a scenario where you don't want to just break the complete loop, but you would like to break only, I mean, not the break, but if you would like to skip only that iteration, then instead of break, you can use continue. So continue is something similar to break, but the difference is now, if I give continue here, what will happen is rather than completely coming out of this loop, it will skip only that iteration. So what do you mean by iteration? For every value you are going through this line of code, right? That is called as one iteration. So for P, you will go this, that is one iteration. For Y, you are going through this as one iteration. Then for T, you will go through this, that will be another iteration. So that way, if you want to skip only one iteration or that current iteration, you will give it as continue. So look at the difference. So you see what happened when you are going through for all the other iterations, it is working. But whenever you are going through the character H, then it is going to continue. When I say continue, it is skipping whatever you have further in that loop, and then it is going to the fresh loop, that is, it is going to start from O. Do you see this? If not, it used to print H also. So that is what, when you say continue, it is going to skip only the current iteration and it will not do anything further, and then from here directly it will go to the beginning and then check with the condition based on what you have given, and it will come back. Getting it?
Yes, I do.
So like this, you can choose whether to break your loop completely using break, or you can just come out of that current iteration and proceed with further iteration using a continue. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so pretty much I'll stop it today, so that in tomorrow's class we will see with the combination of these looping, the conditional statement, and using these operators, what is the different kind of program that we can do together. Okay, so that is how you will be using all those things and we'll be doing a complete program. So we'll further go into a couple of examples using all these things together. How is that you will be writing a program, as well as we will further see into something called as functions and different kind of operations that we can do, which are essential in Python. Any questions?
No, Adam. Cool.